is up? Welcome to the Blended Couple on Fire podcast, season 3, episode 16. Today we get to do Ron Deal 2.0, and that's coming up
right now.
Are you a Christian and you are looking to take your faith, your family, and your future to the next level?
Then this is the channel for you.
Chrissy's jamming out. What's up? Yeah. So we are so excited about this. So we have become BFFs with Ron Deal at this point, which is really awesome. So no, we've actually, had an opportunity earlier to really sit and have some real talk time, some real heart-to-heart with Ron about a lot about blended family. So today's episode specifically is really about an event that he recently had. Now they have it yearly, and he goes into a little bit of that today. We'll make sure to talk a little bit about that today. And about what this blended and blessed thing is that he has been able to be a host of and a lot of that. So we're really excited to do that today. Do you have anything you want to add today?
Yeah, today's our anniversary.
Yeah, today's special. That's awesome.
8 years, yeah.
Yeah, 8 years.
8 years that we've been blended. They are blending. They are bonding.
I should have played that.
Yeah, see? It's the second time now.
No. You can't blame me this time. It wasn't supposed to be played.
Ron is amazing, though. I love him. He is very, very humble, very loving. He just wants to spread God's love through this ministry, through blended families, through Christianity, and help churches have the resources that they need to be able to minister to the blended families. And I just absolutely love that about him because we are a blended family, so it speaks to our heart a lot. So
yeah, so I have a little something I want to read before we bring Ron on.
Something.
Okay, a little something I want to read. So who is Ron Deal, right? And I think this is a good question.
Who is Ron Deal? I mean, he is a big deal.
He is a big deal, right? He is one of the most widely read and viewed experts on blended families in the country and in the world. He is president of Smart Step Families, directs the blended family ministry at Family Life, and is the author of more than a dozen books and resources, including the best-selling The Smart Step Family and Building Love Together in Blended Families. And he did that book with Dr. Gary Chapman. Ron is a licensed marriage and family therapist, popular conference speaker, and host of the podcast Family Life Blended with Ron Deal. He and his wife, Nan, have been married since 1986 and have 3 boys. Yeah. So we are so excited. It has been an amazing thing. So, I would say, we plan on Ron sharing a lot of amazing things today. So I would say grab some paper, grab a pen, and jot down and some tissue maybe. So without further ado, let's introduce our favorite guy, Ron Deal. All right, so we want to welcome Ron Deal back to the show. Ron, we had you on not too long ago, a couple months ago, I believe, but today we have a special reason for having you back on the show. Welcome.
Thank you. It's always good to be with you guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So we know recently you had an incredible event. I know you do a couple events a year, but this year's a little bit different due to COVID reasons and other reasons, but you put on this amazing event called Blended and Blessed. Why don't you give us a quick overview of what Blended and Blessed is?
Yeah. So Blended and Blessed is a 1-day Saturday live stream event that is available to any household, any couple, any person on their smartphone or the laptop computer, or any church anywhere in the world to host on that day. Because it is a live stream and there's a lot of time zones. I don't know if you've noticed that. There's a lot of time zones around the world. Yeah. The cool thing is just like watching a YouTube video. It doesn't matter where you are when you hop into the stream, so to speak. You can rewind and go back to zero and start the day from that point forward. So we have people in Hawaii, we have people in New Zealand, we have people, it's the next morning for them when they're actually tuning into this thing. And churches, when they get the church license, which allows them for $99, okay, that's cheap.
Yeah.
For less than $100, a church can put as many people in the room as they can possibly get in the room. They can all experience it together.
Yeah.
And that creates a community, and that's what we're going for. And I can say more about that in a minute, but they have access to it for up to a year after the event is over. So we have churches 6 months later will bring up the video, and they will get a group of couples together and they'll watch it on a given day or on a retreat format.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or we've had churches use it as a small group tool, and I can say something about that. So we've done 5 of these events. Every one of them is different. It happens every year in the spring, so typically in April. And so it's accessible. Again, you can watch it as an individual or as a couple for $19. Or you can have that church license and use it with your small group or whatever. For the price in the past has been $99 and have access to it for a year.
I love that. So tell us a little bit about where it began. I mean, what brought up Blended and Blessed? Where did its birth come
Besides
from?
divorce.
Yeah. Yeah, that is the backstory for a lot of people, right? But not for everybody. There's a lot of widows.
That's
And by the way, new stat for you guys to be using. I'm just throwing this everywhere I can. 2 months ago, new stat came out. 15% of first married couples form blended families. It's no longer a divorce and remarriage or a widowed story. It's first marriages too. 15% of all first married couples are forming blended families. Nobody's ever been married before, but somebody's got a kid. Now, certain populations, that number's even higher. If you're over the age of 30, it's 25% of first marriages are forming blended families. Black families, 28% of first marriages are forming blended families. This is, an ever-growing population of people. So Blended and Blessed launched as a direct outcome of the ministry that I run for Family Life. Our division is called Family Life Blended. And of course, we specialize in working with step families and helping churches and church leaders know how to minister to and work with step families in their community. And so we dreamed this up a few years ago where we said, there's 2 things that we're trying to do, Josh and Christy, in our ministry. We're trying to equip couples, whether they be dating, engaged, or already married, to do blended family living well. And we're trying to catalyze ministry in churches. So, we thought we could do another video series. Well, we've got one of those. But what we really want to do is create a rallying point. And we want to give churches an excuse to do something that they would never, ever do. Here's the cool thing about Blended and Blessed. Your average pastor in your average church who doesn't know anything about step family living can host this event and have a high quality event for couples in his church and community. And he doesn't have to have the expertise. We bring the expertise. He's just got to turn on the projector. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so we're helping churches start when they wouldn't normally know how to even begin.
Right.
And we're seeing great, great success with that. They step into the water for the first time. They see what it does for people and they think, all right, what's next? And now they're asking a different set of questions. One of my favorite little stories I'll share with you is about a couple in Atlanta. They become friends of mine, and it's been neat to just get to know them and walk alongside their family. The reason this is relevant is because this last April, our last Blended and Blessed event, I actually interviewed 2 of their children live on stage in front of an audience in the thousands. Okay. He's 17, almost a high school graduate. He's graduated at this point, and she was 22 at the time. So 2 step siblings from the same family, willing to talk about their life and their experience and let adults learn something from that. It's this family. 5 years ago at our first Blended and Blessed event, this couple lives in Atlanta. She was going to work one day, started talking with a coworker about her family and life. And her coworker said, oh, that blended family thing, you should read one of these books by this guy named Ron Deal. Well, who's that guy? Well, one little part of the conversation leads to another little thing. And the next thing you know, she hops online and she discovers our Blended and Blessed event is being held with a live audience in Charlotte, North Carolina that year. Come and be part of the live audience if you're in the region. Everybody else, you can live stream it. Well, they drive from Atlanta over to Charlotte and they attend Blended and Blessed, this couple. And they learned a lot and they got excited and they felt, encouraged in their family journey. And then they heard about the other event we host, which is called the Summit on Step Family Ministry. And that's an event for leaders that are trying to learn how to minister to couples in their community. And so in spring, they attended Blended and Blessed. And in later that fall, they fly to where we were hosting. I don't remember where it was that year, the Summit on Step Family Ministry. This was in October. And they go home to Atlanta in November, they hosted their first event they invited couples from other churches to a Thanksgiving sort of blended family Thanksgiving thing where they
awesome.
served a meal, and we're going to talk about doing the holidays as a blended family. And they had 40 people show up.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, wow, this was great, you know, and they now have a logo for their ministry. They call it Blendistry.
Oh, nice. That's
Aw,
good.
love
And their
it.
kids have started a ministry to kids in blended families. They call it Blendish. They have t-shirts, they have logos, they have a website, and it's all because they came to Blended and Blessed and caught the vision and took the next step.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to do with this event.
Love it.
So we catalyze ministry, we get churches doing things they wouldn't normally do, and we get couples showing up for something they wouldn't normally show up for.
Yeah.
It's easy to sit at home. I tell people you can sit in your underwear and be comfortable in your own living room if you want and enjoy this day. Nobody's going to see you or talk to you. And you know, we're reaching people around the world. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love that. So I had to take a note on something, and it was because it was just so profound to me. So, you know, you have your own, of course, you have your own podcast and Family Life Blended podcast, but episode 52, which was just not too long ago, a couple months ago, maybe, you kind of did this Blended and Blessed backstage.
Yes.
And, you know, you had to, you know, kind of give everybody a little snippet of, you know, hey, this is kind of what to expect if you come. And what I love, though, is you had some testimonies on there. And one testimony was a Rob and a Rhonda, and they shared something that was just super profound to me and to something that Chrissy and I were just in the car not too long ago talking about. But it was, they mentioned something about wishing we could go back, you know, and they talked a little bit about wishing they could go back. And, you know, with blended families, you know, and we've talked about it, you know, about shame and guilt and about wish we could go back and wish we could do things different. And hearing her cry and then him get emotional, you know, on your podcast and stuff was just super touching, because it's not always comfortable to share these things, but having a community of people that understand, you know, that's what's awesome about something like a Blended and a Blessed is you now get to meet people that are in the same walk as you. So your shame and your guilt really get to be lowered so much. So I thought that was super profound.
I love the fact that people experience that community. It's different in a live stream. You know, you feel a little disconnected from the live audience. Or from the others that are involved in the live stream, but we invite people to post pictures on social media and hashtag it. And so you do get this sense really fast. You know, this past year, let me just give you a snapshot. So we had somewhere between 3,500 and 5,000 people that Saturday of the last Blended and Blessed event, 47 states in the US and 19 foreign countries.
Wow.
You do feel like you're a part of something. You recognize and you realize, okay, it's not just us. And then you hear the stories of Rob and Rhonda talking about, and by the way, let me just tell your listeners who Rob and Rhonda are. He until very recently, he was a senior pastor of a very large church in the Chicagoland area, very accomplished, doctorate degree. Rhonda is a pediatrician, very accomplished, one of the highly ranked pediatricians in the city of Chicago. They both had former spouses who died of different causes. They come together, form blended family, and they are smacked between the eyes. And they would tell you, here are two intelligent people who didn't have a clue of how to navigate this terrain. And, you know, they, through their journey with us and some of our material, found their way. And now they're on the flip side and they're helping other people. So it's like, yeah, that's my story too. And it's not just us. And you're right. We don't know the answers until somebody sort of shows us the way. And I'm grateful for the Josh and Christies of the world who are doing that, you know, through your own opportunities, your own podcast. And it's great. People just need to feel like they're brought into the community of people walking this. It is a tribe. And we'd love for people to just come alongside what we're doing at Family Life Blended and just jump into the stream, be a part of that, and then take it wherever God empowers you to take it.
I love that.
I do too.
Do you have anything?
The one thing, listening to the Rob and Rhonda story, the one thing Josh and I were just talking about, and something that hit me smack in the face that I wish that we would have went back. We just talked about this on our last podcast, is that I didn't realize it until I read your book about a year ago, is that the different role that my oldest biological son had changed in our own family. And after reading the book, I was like, wow, that is so true. And I wish I have a lot of guilt over that, like, I wish we could have went back and handled that differently, because his daughter remained the oldest only girl. His son remained the second oldest boy. My youngest boy remained the youngest, but my biologically oldest son went to being the third oldest, second oldest boy.
Mhm. Yep.
And we had the most disrespect, like he was the most
Troublesome.
he was the most troublesome.
Yeah.
But now looking back, he had the biggest role change within our unit. And then we made the mistake of not crock-potting our relationship. We tried to microwave it.
Yeah.
And we were like, we're a family unit,
and you're gonna like it whether you want to or
honestly.
not.
yes. And we handled it
Yes.
all wrong. And
Yes.
we had to really learn the real hard way, with knocks and bruises and not understanding or not knowing what we were doing. And so that is the biggest thing that we're trying to create for this community as well, is you have to allow it. You have to give your kids are little humans too. You have to allow them to have their feelings and their struggles with it too. And you can't be those authoritative parents that are like, or is it authoritarian? That where you're like, you're going to like it, and what I say goes type of thing. And that's something that we have regret. Every blended family has regrets in some form or another. And that is some of our biggest, is we tried to microwave us, act like we weren't a step family. Like it's everybody's our kids. We're one. It's denial,
See,
So,
what I love about what you're saying is that we have to listen to the kids and be mindful of them. It doesn't mean they run the show.
right.
I'm not an advocate for that. But I think unwise is the parent who ignores what's going on with the children. If you're asking them, or you're hoping that they will open their heart to what's going on in this new family, well, then you might want to pay attention to what's going on in their heart, right? And let me just say, at every Blended and Blessed event we always have what I call kid speak. It's going to be something that represents what children think or feel in their experience of the home. And it's taken on various forms in the past. And I just have to say this before I forget, all 5 years of Blended and Blessed events. So 6 hours the first couple of years, then 4 hours the last couple of years. All that video is available online on demand through Family Life. You just go to shop.familylife.com, all access digital pass. That's what we call it, the all access digital pass to Blended and Blessed. And people can get access to that for not much money, and use it as a small group tool, or just self-study, whatever that works. So a few years ago, we had Lauren Reitzema. If your audience doesn't know who she is, let me introduce you to her. I helped her get her first book published because it was fantastic. It's called In Their Shoes, in which she wrote about, it's sort of her life, but also perspective about what it is to live through a parent's divorce and then live through the transition into blended family. In her case, 2 blended families, each of her mom and dad remarried. And that book had just come out. We interviewed her at the age of 30 something and her mother about their different points of view and their experience of the same family, right? Because that's the point. Sometimes there is a gap between what adults think and feel and what kids think and feel. It was an incredibly insightful conversation. This last year, I interviewed 2 step siblings from the same step family, one from dad, one from the mom. And we had them reflecting on the 5 years, they're 5 years into their family. What's it been like for you? What was easy? What was hard? What did people do that was helpful? What were some of your thoughts and fears, in the beginning? And what was it like, just logistics? And I'll never forget Trey, young man, was talking about, first couple of days he walked down to breakfast after everybody's in the house now. And he said, I just didn't know what to say to people. And I just was like, do you speak? Do you not speak? Like, I still am trying to figure out who you are, like, and where I put you in my heart. Like, I just don't even know how to even think about that. And so he said, I'm kind of quiet. I write off other people's energy. So if they don't speak, I'm not going to start that. So he said it was just quiet. And then his stepsister spoke up and she said, yeah. And I kind of felt like he didn't care. Like, he didn't want to get to know us. How insightful, right? Just to hear those little moments and go, oh, and that's how it starts. And that's how easy it is to misunderstand or misrepresent. And we had to find our way through this. Now, I mean, 5 years later, these 2 step siblings are really close, buddies, I would say. And I think that's how they would describe it. And it's like, they've come a long, long way. At one point, Trey, I asked him a question about his stepmom. she was super organized and structured, and his biological dad had not been. And so all of a sudden, stepmom was on the scene, and there are rules, and you got to have a plan for your day. And he's like, no, I usually sleep in. Like, I don't have a plan.
Yeah.
And she's like, nope, tell me what you're doing with your day. You're going to be productive. And like that, it's a total culture shock for him. And he knows she's sitting in the audience while he's talking about this. And at one point, he kind of turned and looked at her off camera and made a little heart sign over his heart. And he said, you know, I love you, but I have to say this. And he turned back to the camera and he talked about how hard it was to like her, simply because of the rule changes and the structure expectations, all the stuff he was unfamiliar with and didn't know what to do with. It wasn't about her. It was about all that change. Oh. Today, they're close. But in the beginning, he said, I didn't even know how to like her. I couldn't like her. Listening to kids opens up that conversation to where you go, okay, I need to quit pushing so hard. I need to lower my expectations, slow my roll, meet them where they are. Now everybody's doing better at that point. That stuff matters. And it's a lot of fun for me to bring those insights, in this case, out of a 17-year-old to an audience that really can be blessed by it.
Yeah, I think it's so important that we get to hear all the voices of all the angles, because those are ones that most people, we forget. And you've shared this before. I think a lot of times as adults, we forget this was our choice. It wasn't their choice, right? And now we're inviting them into something and saying, okay, it's time to swim along with us. We're already here. Let's just
be happy.
And like it, right? Enjoy the ride, as it goes, and don't have attitude and don't be upset about stuff. And this is now you're sharing a room and you're doing all these things. And I remember in the beginning for Christy and I, we started realizing that when the kids came back from the respective parents, that we had to give them a cooling off period. In the beginning, we didn't. We're like, you don't talk like that. You don't act like that. You don't do those things. And we realized like, okay, we're just being mean for the first 2 days to our poor kids. It feels like we're just super aggressive all the time. And then we're like, okay, we're just going to give them a couple day break in the beginning. And it was like, they just needed this unwind time. And as time got along, which you always talk about, as time gets long, it's the crock pot thing, it gets better. And then now there really isn't an unwind time anymore, but seeing it from a perspective, like that's so awesome that you guys do that. You bring them up and you show the perspective of the kid. Is the parent doesn't almost never take that into consideration in the beginning. We didn't.
No. And I think it was my idea to start giving them a cooling off period because
way to go. You go, girl.
I came from a blended family. So we started realizing we didn't take into consideration though what they were dealing with. They were going to the respective parents. Neither one of our exes appreciated that we were together. Neither one of our exes are still with or remarried anyone. So they were working against us too. And the kids had to bear that weight. Yep. So they'd have to go to the other homes, bear that weight of saying they're being disloyal and all of these things, and then coming back and then trying to like us as step parents, but feeling disloyal and bearing the weight of that. It was very, very difficult. It was very difficult for them. And it took us a long time to recognize that and have empathy for that and love them through it.
It's tough. So with your event, I would assume that you have each year, you have like an ultimate thing that you really want people to get from the event, so this year, what is it, the one major thing you really were hoping and praying that your audience would walk away with?
And I'm so glad you asked this. I just have to mention this year, we live streamed 2 live streams simultaneously. We were translated into Spanish at the same time. So one live stream was going out in English, one live stream. And for the first time, we were reaching into Latin American Spanish-speaking countries and,
love that.
Trying to reach people there. And it was a lot of fun and a lot of work. Every year there's a theme. This year, the theme was walk in love. And we pulled it out of the book of Ephesians. There's just so many times there where Paul talks about walking in love. In chapter 5, I believe it is 5 verse 2, he kind of coins that little phrase, but all throughout he's talking about walking in Christ, walking in faith. This is what it looks like to walk in community with others. And we essentially just tried to unpack what it looks like to walk in love in your marriage as a parent or step parent, in community with other people, and then as somebody who can advocate to other step families around you. A lot of us don't realize you got a mission opportunity here. Step Family Ministry is relatively brand new, and there's tons of people in your church and in your community that have no idea there's even resources available or anything. And you can just be the one who goes, here, listen to Josh and Christy, listen to this. Here's a book. All that stuff makes a world of difference. So walking in love was the theme this year. I will say we change the theme every year. And sometimes it has sort of a biblical centeredness to it. It's definitely a Christian event. And so there's always that coming from the different speakers that are presenting. By the way, we do panel discussions and do Q&A, and people are able to submit questions in real time. And, you know, we try to give people an opportunity to have their voice be heard if we can. Let me tell you something that came out of the event. I'll never forget this. About 3 years ago, our theme was out of Galatians 5, the fruit of the Spirit. And we kind of just wondered what it would look like to walk out those fruits of the Spirit in a blended family context. And at the end of the day, I made this observation that was shared with me years ago by a friend, and it's always stuck with me. And I think it's a good message for your audience today. And that is, you know, the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. In a blended family, most likely they come in the opposite order. Self-control is what starts the opportunity for the family to experience self-control and gentleness, is what starts the journey for people. Without that, you get people against one another really fast. But with that, outsiders can have a chance to become insiders, and they maybe find the motivation to want to become an insider, to want to belong. It's faithfulness in the middle, somewhere in that list, peace. Those are the things that foster more trust. If you're a step parent being unfaithful, you burned your own bridge in a heartbeat by just being unpredictable and unreliable to your stepchildren. Faithfulness over time shows them you really do care and you can be trusted. And now they move towards you, right? So it's love. In the list, it comes first. But in real life, for blended families, it comes last.
Yeah, that's true.
So true.
And I think that's so helpful and important to hold on to. It's not like that, wow, we're failing because everybody doesn't love each other. Or, you know, 3 out of 4 kids are great, but that one, that's just awful. Well, guess what? Like, that's normal. That's the path. That's what's common. And it's the journey through faithfulness and peacefulness and gentleness and self-control that eventually gives birth to love. So hang on to that.
Yeah, man, that's so good. And that's the first thing we want. I mean, like you said, it's naturally, it's what we desire, but and then we feel like a failure, you know, day in and day out because those things aren't happening. And
right.
Especially as a parent, right? I mean, I want my parents to feel loved and, you know, all of these awesome things, these fruits, you know, we want them to have that. But as a blended family, we're broken humans, and we were brought together from some form of brokenness, and you know, we need to trust the process. That's why I love in your book, you always talk about the crock pot method, not the microwave, which we talked about, but I think it's so important that we just hang on to that hope. I mean, what you're sharing with our listeners right now is hope. There's hope in the process. Stay with it. Stay within community. Stay these things. So, I mean, really what I want to ask you is that if a family feels like they could be outspoken and they are a blended family and they really want to make a difference in their community, they want to make an impact on their church and their friends, you know, what would be your piece of advice for them?
Well, get equipped would be one thing. I'm a firm believer at the end of the day, here's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get community, meaning get people gathered together around good information. Step family answers for step family questions. If you give them the first marriage book for a second marriage problem, guess what? Backfires. If you give them the first marriage parenting book, backfires. Step family answers to step family questions. But what makes it powerful in people's lives is the small group dynamic, the community, the hanging out, the, hey, how's that going with your stepson? You know, yeah, I'm praying for you. That is where the life comes. So good content around community, and that is a magic combination. What that looks like, it can vary in different churches. Sometimes it's Sunday school, sometimes it's a small group in somebody's home, and sometimes it's 2 stepmoms having lunch. Like whatever that is, that looks like for you, that's what I want you to strive for. But getting equipped to be a leader means at least having some information to help you know how to lead, and having some of those step family answers so they're readily available to be able to pass along.
Yeah.
Good resources helpful. We're doing a whole lot of ministry equipping. The other event we do every year is a 2-day step family ministry conference called the Summit on Step Family Ministry. Those two are available. You can have 30 hours of audio and video for less than $100 for our last 8 years of those events, available through All Access Digital Pass. It's available. Even better, we're creating right now a certificate in blended family ministry that you can do online on your own, in your own at your own pace. That'll be a product we hope will be launching this coming fall. There's lots of opportunity to get equipped. You don't have to do this alone. There's people out there who are working at this. You can network, you can spend time with them, you can learn from what they're good at.
Yeah, I love that. So, each person, of course, we think where I'm in a church and, I can't do this by myself. Now you're saying you have so many resources, which you are an amazing resource for these things. A plethora of resources, that people now can feel that they're well equipped to go into maybe starting a small group within their church. I know you have something on Right Now Media, at least you used to. I mean,
yes, still available. The number one viewed small group tool is called the Smart Step Family Video Series. It's on Right Now Media, and it's now free to anybody, whether your church subscribes to Right Now Media or not.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it is true. It's for anybody. You can watch it as an individual couple on your own time and pace, or your church can use it as a resource. It's a really good tool. It's a highly produced tool. Have a new little 10 segment video series coming out with Lori Pullett Short, who was one of our speakers this year at Blended and Blessed. She's got a new book out about step parenting, and that will be coming out on Right Now Media, we hope, in the next 2 or 3 months. Short, sweet little Q&A sort of responses to common questions and dilemmas that step families face. Awesome. There is a plethora, as you say. Our podcast, your podcast, like there's good stuff coming out in lots of ways within the Christian community now. You no longer have an excuse. Now, let me just say something to your audience who is maybe involved in youth ministry or marriage ministry or something. Those are the people we really need to get involved in studying this, because if you work with children's ministry, I bet you have dads drop off and moms pick up from time to time. I bet you have kids who are only there one Sunday a month, maybe 2 at the most. That's going to be common going forward. Why? Because kids are at the other home. What do you do with that? If your curriculum is based on a sequential model, and they've missed 2 and 3, they have no idea coming into week 4 what class is about, and they feel behind and they feel like an outsider. And what you'll find is they don't want to come back. Teenagers don't want to come back. We have got to adapt every level of ministry in the local church. Have a mindset to run it through the filter of how does this affect blended families, single parent families, and then we decide whether it's a good idea and how we go about it. If we're not doing that, then we are effectively closing the door to those families even wanting to feel like they belong or being a part. My new book that comes out in September, I just want to mention, Preparing to Blend. Guys, I feel this huge responsibility to help premarital counselors do pre-blended family counseling, because most of them are not. They're giving the same 6 sessions to a couple in their mid-50s who have 7 children between the 2 of them, as to a couple getting married for the first time in their mid-20s and no children. It's a totally different territory, and you are not helping them at all. I'll just be candid. You're not helping them at all if that's what you're doing. We have an opportunity to speak into and set a precedent for what pre-blended family counseling should look like. And that's what this book is. It's designed for couples to do themselves, but even better if they do it alongside a counselor, a pastor, somebody who's going to walk through it with them, and everybody's going to get further down the road together. I'm very excited about that resource because, again, it helps them do so with a mindfulness, not just for what's happening with a couple. Are you ready to marry? That's only one question.
Yeah.
The other question that must be answered is, are the children ready? And in what way are they ready? And are you ready to try to take on the task of becoming a family? Because that's what you're giving birth to when you get married. And pastors are not, they're inadvertently not helping couples be ready for that. And so again, no matter what area of ministry you're involved in, there is an application of all of this material to the people, the audience, if you will, that you're trying to help.
Yeah.
So, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, at the church that I grew up in, I was the only youth person that was from a blended family. So I always felt
Yep.
like an outcast at the church I grew up in because my dad didn't go to church. My mom did. And so I consistently missed every other week. And so I always felt like, even to this day, some of the people I still talk to that I grew up with in that church, they'll be like, "Oh man, don't you remember this time that we went and did this?" And I'm like, "No, it must have been a weekend I was at my dad's," like
Yeah. Wow.
I was there, I was 50%.
Yeah.
And that's the only choice that I had. And it's much more common now in the church community because for that reason, because divorce is more than back when I was younger. Divorce is even more prevalent in our community. And it is we have to think, like we were talking about earlier, about what the kids think. The kids feel like they're outsiders for the church community, and they need to be embraced.
I just did an interview with a couple for the Family Life Blended podcast, and in their church, they still hand out rewards to children for Sunday school attendance. Well, what statement does that make to the kids who cannot be there, not of their own volition, but because of something that's going on with their parents? You can't underestimate that. I mean, I'm not saying we should let the circumstances of some impact the decisions for all. We do need to have some discretion, but we should at least let it be a factor.
Yeah.
And I'm not even sure it's a factor for
Right.
most.
Because what's the end goal? We don't want children. I mean, there's been tons of studies done right now about our college age kids graduating high school that are exiting the church and never coming back. And what's the end goal? We want our kids to stay in a relationship with God and stay coming to church. And if we're making them feel exiled as children, what's going to make them want to start continuing to go once they can make their own decisions? And that is our future, is that are our children. So yeah,
it is. If we were gonna, if our listeners, we'd be doing them a disservice if we didn't give them an opportunity to connect with you. And I think probably the best way is for somewhere they could give you their email so you could stay in contact with them. What would be the best opportunity for them to do that?
Well, website, probably the best. There's 2 or 3 sites that I'm connected with, but the one that connects them to everything that I'm involved in, whether it's online training or live events or the podcast that I do, et cetera. smartstepfamilies.com. smartstepfamilies.com is the place that they would want to go. If you want to email our ministry at Family Life, you can do that. blended@familylife.com. That's the email address. blended@familylife.com.
Awesome. Ron, as always, it's been amazing, insightful, from a blended family to you. We appreciate all the work and listening to, God's calling on your life. And it makes a difference. I know we talked earlier about how hard sometimes that is, but your perseverance through it. People like us are very thankful for you. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And we give God the glory for it.
Amen. We do. All right. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you.
Wow, what an amazing, amazing guy to talk to, especially when it comes to blended family, step family stuff.
He's so smart.
He's so smart. He's been doing this for so long, and he's just so gracious with his time and his wisdom. He just wants to pour out resources into the Christian community, even the non-Christian community. He just really cares so much about blended and step families, So something I wanted to show, and I want to pull it up on the screen here real quick. Something I wanted to show is his book that's coming out. And this is something that's not coming out until August, but it is Preparing to Blend, the Couple's Guide to Becoming a Smart Step Family. And he has a lot of books. So even if you just Google, you don't have to Google them, just go to Amazon and type in Ron Deal, and you'll be able to see all kinds of books that he's done. And I mean, there's ones for stepmom, stepdad, step families. I mean, there's all kinds of awesome stuff. So I can encourage you to do just that. So you have anything you want to add after that amazing interview, my love?
Just the fact that he is exactly who you see on this podcast. Yep. So before, any of our guests, before we have them on, we usually have them on a little bit early so we can talk with them and get to know them a little bit better, especially if it's their first time being on. And both times, Ron is just extremely welcoming. He wants to know about us as much as we want to know about him. It just oozes out of him what God has given him to do as far as letting blended families know that God still loves them. And the churches need to know that blended families have to do things differently, and that's okay. And there's a specific way to do it that would make it easier. Not easy, but make it easier for us to do, rather than having to learn the hard way of trying to microwave the family, or going to counseling and getting the same type of counseling tips for husband and wife in a nuclear family as a blended family. And it is difficult. I know, I'm sure, for a lot of pastors, because the men are supposed to be the leaders of the home. In the blended family, that is still the way that it should be, especially, with Christianity. But if there's stepchildren involved, it does need to be handled just slightly differently. And maybe a lot of pastors or churches don't address that because they're just unaware, or don't know how, or uncomfortable, because it's unfamiliar territory. So I would just suggest any blended families, or even any pastors that watch this, or youth pastors, like Ron brought up about the kids in children's church, a lot of times they get camp points or points for Sunday school attendance or church attendance. And, you may want to consider kids that are in blended families. It's not their fault that they can't be there every week. They have to go to the other parent's home, and it's okay to adjust and make arrangements for things that are out of their control. We need to focus on the things we can control, right? So I think Ron just brings a lot of value to this space, and the fact that he encourages everyone else across the U.S. and in other countries that also want to bring more awareness to this space and love and community, the better. And I just love him for that.
Yeah, something that was really awesome that we were able to talk to with Ron before the interview, is that, stepping into the blended family space, especially in the Christian community, is really hard because there's so much shame and guilt that's surrounded around blended families. And a lot of time, and it's even really funny because Christy and him had this moment where they were like, really their thoughts were at the same place when they talked about how, we're almost in denial. A lot of blended families in the beginning are really in denial. Like, we're not a blended family, we're a family. And that's an unfair situation for the whole family unit, for the couple, for the children, for the church community they belong to. And helping people really step up and step out. That's why we want to be advocates for blended families, because a lot of times people don't even know they need to have a voice in their church, and say, hey, we have a unique situation, and that doesn't make us any less than, that just means that we really need to, be a little more thoughtful in the way that we do it. Camp points, there's something to do with, I didn't even think about that before. And when they were talking about that, I'm like, man, that's an aha moment for me, because even if the church is like, oh, you know what, we'll make it up to the kids, that are step family kids. Like, no, like this is bragging rights for these kids. They feel awesome when they earn these extra points. And now it's like, that whole system is it's shot now because of that. And it's just little things like that, why it's so important that blended families, we really step up in the Christian community and say, hey, we want to bond together in community and really make a difference. So that's what I love so much about Ron, is he is a full-on advocate for that.
He is.
He truly is. So we want to thank you so much for being here. Don't forget, we'll be here next Tuesday at 7 with some more amazing content. But check out Ron. Get on his mailing list, his email list, and he's got so much awesome stuff. There's great stuff always coming, and they always want to help keep us informed with resources, tools, and all kinds of other awesome stuff. So I want to thank everybody for being here, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.